Hello guys, Damien Jones here again for you today, and today I've got some interesting tokens to share with you. I've got 3 of them, and a rather interesting, little cartwheel penny with holes in, which has a story in its own. Tokens were basically used by collieries, workhouses, and even prisons as a form of, a form of currency that could only be used within that place. I've got 2 good ones here for you, and we'll have a look at them in a minute, but also got this as well, which I thought was quite interesting. It's a very, very heavily worn cartwheel 2p piece. You can barely make the date out on it now because it's so worn, but just here you can just see the faint impression of the year, which will be of course 1797, and the very faint silhouette still remains of King George III there, and it's been pierced. Now you often find these, I've got a whole book, because I collect coins and things. I've got a whole book full of cartwheel pennies. They're quite common, but I especially like the ones that have been holed or counter stamped or engraved and given as love tokens and things like that, because it's just something that we don't do nowadays. They basically, well, when they're not as worn flat as this, they basically weigh 1 ounce. They're basically 1 ounce of pure copper. And this one, it tells a story in itself because of its piercing. It's pierced dead center, and on the other side there are 2 shallow holes which don't completely pierce it. And what I reckon this has been recycled into, because a lot of these were recycled and used as sometimes you'll find stamps of let's see, shops and merchants name stamps and things like that on them. And what that basically is that they were used as trading weights and things like that. I've also seen these things where you can tell they've been used as loom weights. But this one, I believe, has rather a sweet little story to it, as if you were to stick a matchstick through it, not the type of matchsticks we have now, but let's say a little later than this thing was minted, so let's say in the 1800s. I believe that somebody has done this for their child, and that this has been made into a spinning top. So I think that's rather a sweet little thing, You can just imagine a piece of wood or a matchstick, and they've sort of counterbalanced it, and obviously tied this on 2 other pieces of wood there so that they've got something to twizzle. And I think that's actually quite a sweet little thing in itself to have, because, although it's very worn and it's worthless as a collectible piece, there's a little story there, isn't there? That probably over 200 years ago, some guy, when I made this copper coin into a spinning top for one of his little uns. And it's really quite sweet and poignant that it survived. So that's that one. And I also have 2 tokens here. The first one is a Workhouse token. That's if this will focus, that's right. This is from Birmingham Workhouse, and it's a 1 penny token, and it's dated 1812. And we can see here the very grim workhouse itself. Birmingham Workhouse. And on the back it says £1 note payable at the workhouse for 240 tokens. So I think it's highly unlikely that an inmate of the workhouse will have been paid in this. This would have been more rather one of the screws or other such scumbags that worked in these horrific places will have probably been paid with this. And 1 penny token within the workhouse will have been worth 240 tokens. I bet you that's seen some history, hasn't it? So that's that one. And finally, my most interesting one. This, I mean, does that building in front of you not look only ominous but also familiar? That, my friends, is Newgate Prison. And it says on the back, this is a halfpenny token, by the way, and it dates, I've checked it out, it dates to 1794. And it says on the back, we can just about make it out, payable at the residence of Miss Simmons, Winter Botham, Ridgeway and Holt's. So this was payable to that old bitch, whoever she was, at Newgate Prison back in the late 1700s. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Newgate Prison now. For those of you that maybe watching from abroad, basically Newgate Prison was a prison in London, and it stood at the corner of Newgate Street and Old Bailey. It was just inside the city of London. It was originally located at the site of Newgate, and basically Newgate was the Roman entrance to the London Wall, right? So basically you have the old entrance, you know, you'll have, say, like Newgate and, I don't know, say Westgate, Watergate, all of this. There generally were 4 gates to every Roman walled city, and Londinium was one of them. And Newgate was the site, basically, of the entrance, okay? And around that, obviously over time, Newgate Prison was brought up. Now, Newgate Prison itself was built in the 12th century, believe it or not, and it was remained in use for over 700 years, from the period of 1188, and it was finally, this awful shithole was finally demolished in 1902. So, you know, it remained in service for quite some time, and basically it was a awful place. It really was. It's the sort of place where people would be sent for all manner of crimes. You'll probably recall stories of Highwayman, you know, before being sent to the infamous Tyburn gallows, which was a big public spectacle in the 1700s. They'll often have been imprisoned there in Newgate Prison. So, you know, this is quite an interesting little token to have, and, you know, there's a good story in it in itself. Aye. Where are we? Basically, all manner of criminals stayed at Newgate. Some committed acts of petty crime and theft and breaking and entering homes, or, you know, right up to murderers and highway robbers and other more serious crimes such as rapes and murders. Basically, upon their arrival in Newgate, the prisoners would be chained and led to the appropriate dungeon for their crime. Those who had been sentenced to death stayed in a cellar beneath the keeper's house, when this was basically, essentially, an open sewer lined with chains and shackles, and this was there put in place to encourage submission of the prisoners. Otherwise, common debtors, they were sent to the Stone Hall, whereas common felons were taken to the Stone Hold. The dungeons were filthy, dirty, unlit, and they were described as so depraved that physicians would refuse to enter them. And over time, basically, the conditions never improved. So this is from a period of 1188 right up until 1902, when this awful place was eventually demolished. And good riddance to it. Basically, the Old Bailey, that still stands, but no trace of this this awful place still exists. But it's an interesting little piece of history. I wonder who Miss Simmons' Winter Botham Redgway was. God, that's a long name, isn't it? You can almost picture her, can't you? Some awful old bag in a in a peaked bonnet and a bent nose, taking these halfpenny tokens. I don't know. Well, there you go, guys. It's just a quick look and a little bit of history of Newgate Prison, Birmingham Workhouse, and just an old cartwheel penny that somebody once made into a spinning top. Cheers for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. And if you did enjoy this, please give me the thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more. And I'll be back again very soon with something else. Cheers for watching.